Hello, Frizzle Forum. Typically, when I review the books that I read recently for you, I have like 10 to 15 to talk about. Today I have 46, because it's just been a little while since I had the time to make one of these videos. So I will not be reviewing every single book with a 2-minute review like I usually do. Instead, I will be thoroughly reviewing for you the top 5, and we'll be going quickly through the ones that I recommend a little least. But just to be clear, I do recommend everything that's like 3 stars and up, depending on your reading taste. Got it? Got it. So I've sorted these books into fun categories for us, and the first category is Pride and Prejudice books, because I reread Pride and Prejudice and gave it 3 stars. The classic style is not entirely to my taste, but I did like it. And then I read 3 Pride and Prejudice retellings. Yes, I was going to make these into a video. No, that video didn't end up existing. So I read Pride and Prejudice in Space, 2 stars, Heartstone, 3 stars, and Ayesha at Last, one of my top 5 books of this video, so let's talk about it. So this is a modern day Pride and Prejudice retelling. It takes place in Toronto, Canada, and one of the reasons I love this book is it's following a very particular subculture in Toronto, Canada, where the parents of our characters are immigrants from South Asia. So our protagonists are both part of that culture that their parents are coming from and the generalized Canadian culture. Another interesting part of this book is all of our characters are Muslim, and that just gave such an interesting lens through which to look at this story, because that's not my religion or a culture I'm super familiar with, but I loved learning about it through this book. So our heroine, our Elizabeth Bennet character, is named Ayesha, and she has a teaching job and she really loves doing poetry, and she does these performances on the side. She gets wrapped up in planning a wedding for her cousin, and she also gets wrapped up in planning this activity conference for young people through her mosque. And it is through that event planning that she meets our Darcy character. And one of the things I loved about this book is we get both of their perspectives. Our Darcy character is somewhat socially awkward. He comes from a really conservative family, and he really believes that the way he's gonna find love is he's just gonna let his mom arrange a marriage for him. And then when he starts to develop a crush and a lot of respect for this fellow person on his planning committee, Ayesha, he starts to maybe question some of that. One of the things that I love in romance, and I think this book so nailed, was the way both of our characters got arcs that helped them grow into being a better couple together. They influenced each other into seeing the world in a different way and growing, and like, it was such a nice romance. I loved the writing. I loved that we got both their perspectives. It was romantic and cute and fun, and definitely would recommend to people looking for a Pride and Prejudice retelling rom-com. Oh, and I gave Ayesha at Last 4 stars, but definitely a high 4 stars, almost 5. Our next section is non-fiction. I read Humble Pie, a book about various math mistakes and the engineering disasters that they cause, and The Anthropocene Reviewed, a collection of memoir essays by John Green. 3 stars. The next section is new releases. These are all sci-fi fantasy books that have come out in the last few months. We have Buried Deep, a short story collection from Naomi Novik, 4 stars. Riven Empire, the conclusion to a trilogy which I loved and highly recommend, by T.A. Hernandez, 4 stars. An Instruction in Shadow, an urban fantasy with nice flavors of progression fantasy that I was very much looking forward to. It's a sequel, 4 stars. The Rarkins Fall, another sequel that I was looking forward to. This one is high fantasy, and I was really impressed with how the sequel really enlarged the world building of this series, 4 stars. Lady Macbeth, one that I was so looking forward to because I love this author, but was disappointed, 2 stars. And Air, another one that I was looking forward to because I'd heard so many good things about this author, but I gave it 2 stars. Then we have the category of romance-centric books. Some of these are straight up romance, some of them are romantasy, some of them are sci-romance, and more, you'll see. So I read Silver Shark, a sci-romance novella, 4 stars, and there is a vlog where I'm reading that. I'll link it down below if you want to watch it. The Unhoneymooners, a rom-com that I gave 2 stars and DNF'd because sometimes the rom-coms are too goofy comedic and I can't suspend my disbelief enough to enjoy it. Then The Dividing Sky, a sci-romance, a dystopian, a new release, and a YA book, and this might just be the next big dystopian because I did really love its world building and attention to detail there. However, I really didn't find myself ever rooting for the romance and kind of hated that part, so 3 stars in the end. The Red Rope of Fate, a romantasy focused a lot on the cultural differences and communication difficulties between our 2 leads, 3 stars. Dangerous Assassin, a romantasy a lot focused on the stabby assassin-y parts, 3 stars. And then books that have reached my top 5 for this video, 5 books in the Veronica Speedwell series. So this is a historical mystery romance. No sci-fi fantasy here. And the mysteries themselves are fine, are good. I was interested in them, but the real treasure of this series, the reason that it is in my top 5 reads of the last 46 books, is the romance at the center of this book series. In 1887, we start with the book A Curious Beginning, following a woman named Veronica Speedwell. She is a professional butterfly hunter naturalist. She's very independent and likes to go travel the world and have adventures by herself. She gets saddled with having a new mystery-solving partner by her side, Stoker. Stoker is a man who is very into the natural world as well. He is a professional taxidermist, and he has his own troubled history with going on adventures all over the world. And the fun part about this very slow burn romance between them is that they just get each other. They have very unique personalities. They love to bicker, they love to argue, and kind of the only person that they can find a good match with is in each other. And there's so much in this book exploring that friendship between them as they bond. And that just makes the slow burnness of this romance so delectable that you know they're like perfect for each other, and yet they won't admit their feelings for each other for so many books, and you get these fun mysteries along the way, and like I was so enjoying this. So book 1, A Curious Beginning, 4 stars. Book 2, A Perilous Undertaking, 4 stars. Book 3, A Treacherous Curse, 4 stars. Book 4, A Dangerous Collaboration, 4 stars. And Book 5, A Murderous Relation, 3 stars. I kept wondering as I was reading these books, like, how long can these books keep being this good? And it turned out the answer was 4 books. Because while the mysteries are good, they aren't like the main star of the show here in the series, and there's only so long you can really maintain this slow burn romance being drawn out until it starts getting annoying and just feeling like miscommunication. And here in book 5 is where I feel like we finally hit the tipping point, and so I decided not to continue the series. But I am very happy with the first 4 books and would recommend. Our next section is Brandon Sanderson. I read a whole handful of Brandon Sanderson novellas. I vlogged reading all of them, so if you want thorough reviews, you can find that video linked in the footnotes on my channel. So, zipping through these, we have Defending Elysium, 2 stars. Dark One Forgotten, 3 stars. The Original, 2 stars. Snapshot, 4 stars. The Legion trilogy, starting with Legion, 4 stars. Skin Deep, 4 stars. And Lies of the Beholder, 3 stars. Firstborn, 3 stars. And Perfect State, 3 stars. Our next category is book club. I run a book club for my patrons. If you would like to join, I'd love to have you there. You can join the lowest tier here through YouTube memberships or the higher tiers through Ko-fi. That's all linked in the description. In this book club, we read a sci-fi fantasy book once a month. So we've got quite a few to talk about because I haven't made one of these wrap-up videos in a few months. We discuss the book in chat messages on Discord, and then me and my husband Seth host a live show discussion for it at the end of the month. It's super fun, and I would be so happy to have more people in the book club. And in the last few months, we have read some bangers. So let's talk about them, because I've got some reviews for you. We have Piranesi. I have been itching to read this book for years since it came out because I've loved the other book that this author wrote. And I really wanted to read it as a book club because I knew that there'd be some good discussion points in this book based on other people's reviews, and boy, was it. I think this goes down as the most successful book club read of the 3 years I've been running it, because everyone who cared enough about the book to finish it gave it 5 stars, including me. This, it might be one of my new favorite books of all time. I read Piranesi in 24 hours. And then the next day I was like, that was not enough. And I read it again. In 48 hours, I read this book twice, okay? I'm obsessed with it. So what is Piranesi about? That's a little bit hard to explain. This is a short little book. It's about 250 pages, and it is all fueled by your own curiosity. So much of the book is you going, wait, what's going on? What does that mean? And then you get to figure out all of the very satisfying answers as you continue reading. So in that way, it is a super easy book to spoil because so much of the joy is finding out these answers for yourself. I mean, I also had a really fun time rereading it, so even if you know all the answers, like, it's still a great book, okay? So I will now attempt to pitch this book to you in a no spoiler manner, okay? Prepare to be a little dissatisfied. Our main character in this book is a man named Piranesi. The entire book is told through his journals. He's a meticulous note taker, and he currently has a mission to catalog the world around him. The world in which he lives is a strange one. An infinite labyrinth of rooms that are filled with weird marble statues. There's also an ocean in the basement and lots of birds and fishes that live there. And he is a meticulous note taker, and he gives you a lot of, granted, a little bit extraneous details, but I loved the voice in this book. For example, he will tell you about all of the people that have ever existed in this world, to his knowledge. There's him, 𝐅𝐻𝐻𝐒, the one other person who's alive in this labyrinth, who he meets with twice a week to discuss their discoveries, and the 13 skeletons he's found in the various nooks and crannies of the halls. He has books and years of these journals on his shelves, and here's the detail that really got me hooked that you learn near the beginning of the book. His journals go back like 7 years, and the numbering system starts in like 2011. And then present him has no idea what the year 2011 means, and it quite confuses him of why he would ever date something like that. So it's an extraordinary, short, mysterious fantasy book, and I highly recommend that you try it out. It's one of my new favorite books of all time, and I really hope that you can love it too. I gave 𝐅𝐻𝐻𝐒 5 stars, of course, both times that I read it. Next up, the book club read The Crown Tower, which is the first book in the Rhaenyra prequel series. Everyone in the book club agreed that this was an easy read, a likable read, but I don't think it's anyone's new favorite. I gave The Crown Tower 4 stars. I did then go read the next book in the series, The Rose and the Thorn, and I gave that one 2 stars. Then the book club read Remnant Population, another book that is difficult to describe, but I'm going to try because it's one of my top 5. So this is a sci-fi book. It takes place on this faraway planet where there is one colony of people trying to help terraform the planet and get a new society started there. However, their corporate overlords decide that they aren't being productive enough, and they're just gonna like pull the plug on this whole project and get all the people off that colony onto another planet. We are following a main character named Ophelia, and she is an old woman. She has been on this planet for decades. She has raised kids here. She has tended her garden here, and she is grumpy. She doesn't want to leave, mostly just because she doesn't want to go anywhere. She doesn't have the energy. She would like to be alone for a while instead of going to a new colony. So when everyone else packs up into spaceships and leaves, she hides and stays behind to run the colony by herself. And there starts Ophelia's journey of not self-discovery, but maybe self-rediscovery, where she's been in this stilted society for so long where it was always like someone was telling her what to do, someone was pushing her in this direction or that direction her whole life, and now she is the only person on this planet, and she's finally like coming into her own and making her own things and taking dominion over everything. I think one of our book clubbers, Striped Wolfie, said it best when she described the first third of this book like someone implementing a therapy technique of taking their power back. And then the next 2/3 of this book, the plot completely shifts because this turns into a first contact situation. It turns out that there's intelligent life on this planet, and Ophelia and these intelligent life forms come into contact. And eventually, through the discovery and news of these aliens, the human corporations come back to this planet as well and also collide with Ophelia, newly come in to her power. Not like fantasy power, just like self-confidence kind of power, you know? And all through this book, Ophelia is a grumpy, judgy old woman. And it's so fun and refreshing to be following this narrator that is unlike most other narrators in fiction. She really has interesting perspectives, and I loved following her. I also loved so many passages in this book dealing with the first contact scenario and how she handles it. Like, it's so fun. I also felt like this book was a little too slow and dragged a lot through some chapters, but I did enjoy my time with it quite a bit, and I gave Remnant Population 4 stars. So what is the book club reading next? This month we're reading Ninth House. And next month in December, I don't know what we're reading next because the poll is still up. And if you want to join the book club and have a vote in that poll, I would be so happy to see you there. Our next category is miscellaneous adventurous sci-fi fantasy that didn't fit into my other categories. We have The Last Stand of Mary Good Crow, 2 stars. Even the Darkest Stars, 2 stars. 2 books where I was continuing on in a series where a patron recommended a book to me. I have the enormous privilege of my patrons each get to choose a book that I have to read, and a lot of them have been very fun reads. So I read The Better Part of Valor, 4 stars, and The Heart of Valor, 3 stars. Then A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking, 3 stars. And if you want a more thorough review video of that one, I am currently making a vlog project including it, and I'll link it down in the footnotes when it exists, which will be soon-ish. Our next section is rereads. Because I reread the 4 books of the Raven Boys series, and I gave them all 5 stars, as I did the first time I read them. These are urban fantasy books following a group of teens. It takes place in a rural town in Appalachia, and they have so many interesting components. I think one of my favorite components to them is that the writing is gorgeous. This author, Maggie Stiefvater, is just like the queen of beautiful metaphors and descriptive language, and it really excels here in creating beautiful atmosphere. And that atmosphere is one of little magics and ancient kings and ghostly spirits. So like I said, this book is following a group of teens. Let me tell you about a few of them that are especially important in the first book. One of them is a girl named Blue. She has grown up in a house full of women. Her mother, her mother's friends, her various aunts and cousins and stuff, and everyone else in the house is a psychic. They predict the future, do tarot card readings for people, have a psychic hotline phone number, and the house is full of love and chaotic energy. Now Blue, our main character, has this prophecy hanging over her head that if she kisses her true love, he'll die. And kind of in reaction to that, she's made it her personality to just like stay away from boys, because who needs that drama? She's a very practical kind of person, and I love this character. That's one of the other reasons that I love this series so much, is the characterization is so on point. You really get to know the inner thoughts and struggles of every character and how they all intersect, and their interesting friendships that they make out of it. And so Blue does intersect and become friends with a group of boys, the Raven Boys. They are attendees of the private rich kid snooty school nearby. The ringleader of this group of Raven Boys is named Richard Campbell Gansey III. He just goes by Gansey. And he is obsessed with this dream. He has his own kind of prophecy hanging over his head where he feels like he needs to find this sleeping ancient Welsh king, that he is following his own legends and prophecies about this king that never really died, that was just buried somewhere and is still sleeping, and it will give a favor to the one who wakes him. And Gansey has tracked the likely location of this grave to their sleepy small town and is on the hunt for it with his group of very interesting assistants. So if this book series sounds interesting to you, I highly recommend it. I love all 4 books. Then we have another reread, which is The Fellowship of the Ring. And I gave this book 2 stars, and I did make a long video very thoroughly explaining all of my thoughts on this book, which I'll link down in the footnotes for you. So thank you so much for listening to me talk about all of these books that I loved recently, and briefly mention the ones that I didn't love so much.